everyone, this is Veronica with Sew It Seams, and welcome back. Today we are going to be working on block H-2, also called Jacob Anthony, from the Dear Jane quilt book. This block looks a little intimidating, but I don't think it's going to be too bad. We are just going to need to take our time with it. You can do a couple of different ways on this block that I can see. One would be to take each of these little triangles and make a template and cut all the different triangles out and then sew them together. I had considered doing it that way, but I think what I would like to do is paper piecing. The fabrics that I have chosen for this block today is this orange fabric for my main focus fabric, and then of course the muslin for my background. So let's take a closer look at how we're going to put this block together. I've decided that I want to do paper piecing, but I can't just make a copy of this and then flip it and sew on it, because then it will be turned and it'll be the wrong way. I've made a copy of this pattern in the book so that I can use this as my paper piece pattern. But if I were to just flip this over and sew my pieces on the back, like you would with a regular paper piece pattern, and you have your lines here, then it is actually going to be reversed. The pattern itself is going to be angled, and it's not going to be correct in the placement of the colors. So I will have my pattern turned 90 degrees. Okay? Then when I flip this over, you can't see it, but my pattern lines up perfectly with everything here. Now, I could just sew onto this paper and do it however I wanted with the colors, but the colors wouldn't line up. So with turning it and then flipping it over, now I know that right down here, this triangle here is the orange. So that means this triangle here is going to be my orange. So what I'm going to do is take some time to just mark where my colors are going to be on this center triangle section, because this is the part that's going to be paper pieced, and then I will piece the rest of it around it. So when I look at my pattern here, I see that this bottom corner triangle is orange. So I'm going to just put a little mark right here in this one, because that's going to be colored. And when I flip it back, it's going to line up right there. Now, because I've got the first one marked, I can go ahead and mark all the rest. So I know we're going to, and it's going in reverse. So I'm going to move this over here, because now I'm going to be looking at Jane's block here and my pattern here. So this is where we're matching right here. So that's going to be orange. I'm going to mark this. I mean, that's obvious because it's the applique triangle. But we've got colored, colored, and colored. And then popping up, colored, 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 and colored, colored, colored. In there. Okay, this will let me know which ones need to be the orange, and then the rest are just going to be the muslin. So here is my paper piece pattern, and you can see it is the complete opposite. It's a mirror image of this drafting, and the colors are the mirror representation of Jane's block. So now I'm ready to start getting my pattern ready for paper piecing. Now with paper piecing, I can't just go ahead and start paper piecing this whole thing. I need to take this center part out, because this is what's going to be paper pieced. And I'm going to have to do it in rows. So I'd have to do it into sections, and I'll cut it into 3 sections so that I can paper piece each row. And then I'll sew those 3 rows together and then work on the outer part. So first let's cut out my middle sections here. Here is the center section of my pattern cut apart and into strips so that I am ready to do paper piecing. Now what I'll do is start on one end of stitching my orange. So we work from the back. I'll put a piece of orange fabric here and then start stitching so that it's orange muslin, orange muslin, orange muslin. And I'll do that on each row. This first row is complete. And you can see the pattern design coming across here. I have it pinned on both ends to keep it from shifting. So before I even take anything off, I would draw my seam allowance all the way around this pattern. And actually, I like to do that anyway on some of these, just in case my pattern does come off. And now I can actually remove my pins if I wanted to and remove that pattern, and I've got it traced all the way around. Since I will be lining up rows together, what I'm going to trim are the sides, but I'm not going to worry about the ends right now. So I have my 1/4 of an inch right in there. Now I trimmed 1/4 of an inch, and you can see that my piece did not quite come all the way to 1/4 of an inch. I'm not concerned about that because I know that I will be stitching by hand here and it will be caught in, so there won't be a problem. Leaving that 1/4 of an inch extra. And then when I turn this over, you can see that pattern of the triangles, which in the block when it's finished will be in this way. So now I'm going to do exactly the same thing 2 more times. I am now finished sewing all 3 of the rows of the paper piecing, and you can see we've got some cute little triangles. Now it's time to match these up together. I'm going to start with these 2. And with this, we are working at an angle. So our point here is going to need to match up with our point here. So let's get our pins. And I'm going to start with my pin coming right through that point. I've got my line here. Right here is where that triangle meets up. So you see my pin came right through there. And then I'm going to have my triangle point here is where my pin is going to go through. And I check on the back, and I'm coming right through that seam line. Here's my next one. I'm going to get my pin right through the point of this triangle where my seam is. And once again, you can see it's coming right through that point of that triangle. And then my needle's going to go through the point of that triangle. And when I look on the back, it comes right through. Now normally I would not put so many pins, but this is going to be getting pretty bulky. I've got a triangle point here, which means I have 1, 2, 3 pieces of fabric all seaming here. and then also 3 pieces of fabric seaming here. So I have 6 pieces of fabric all converging into this one point here, same as over here. So the more pins I have, the less it's going to shift and the more exact my stitching line is going to be. Now we're on the end here. I'm going to put my pin right in this corner where my seam allowance is, and it's going to be along this line, but on my seam allowance I'm not sure where that line was drawn. So there it is, right there, and I've got to make sure that I'm still right at the edge. There we go. Okay, so I've got my line there lined up, and I'm just going to pin it down. Then I'm going to come over here, and right here my seam allowance comes right up, or my stitching line comes right up here where the pieces of fabric meet. And now I'm going to flip it over and go right through that quarter. So I have the points where my pins are going through are right on the stitching line, and when I flip it over, where the pin is coming through is also right on the stitching line. This is just another anchor, but right here and there. So now I'm going to just do my hand stitching all the way across. To keep this from kind of pulling apart, I'm going to anchor my stitch a little bit beyond either side of this stitching line. The center of the paper pieced pattern is now completely done, and I can trim this piece up. As I've been doing each paper piece section, I traced the outline. So this is where the stitching line is. So I will trim that 1/4 inch all the way around, and we'll work on the next section. I wanted to come back and take another look at the block that Jane made and the drafting that Brenda Papadakis did. When we look at Brenda's drafting, we're looking at this outer border. And one thing I'm noticing is that the seam is going at an angle to the corners. When we look at Jane's block, it's a little hard to see, but it looks like she is doing that same thing. I can see the seam on this part here. It's coming to the corner. Can't quite see it there. It's a little too blown out. Same there. This is where I am actually going to deviate from what both Brenda and Jane have done. Frankly, right now, I'm tired of making angled seams, so I'm going to do mine a little differently. Here's my center section, and basically what I'm going to do is cut a strip of fabric and just sew a strip of fabric on either side, press it, trim it, and then sew a strip of fabric on either side, press those and trim those, and then applique the diamonds on either of these corners here, and then trim it to size. I'm doing this because at this point I just need something a little easier. This was pretty labor intensive doing this middle part. Now, if you want to do exactly the way that Jane did, that's fine. You're going to be working with some Y seams because you're going to need to cut a piece and have an angle there, and cut a piece and have an angle there, and sew in that Y seam. I may do something like that on another block, but for this one, I'm not going to do that. So first, let me get 2 pieces stitched onto either side of this block. I now have these strips sewn on all 4 sides. I cut these strips about 1.5 inches wide, and then just cut a big long strip and sewed one on, and then trimmed it off, sewed another, trimmed it, and did that way all the way around. Now, the block is going to be at an angle from this. When I look at the block in the book, The squaring up line is actually going to be right here on this diagonal. And on the Dear Jane ruler, it has these crisscrosses right in the center. So I'm going to line my ruler up on that middle diagonal line. Okay, so what we have here is this diagonal is going right through here, matching up to these triangles. And then we can see the corners here have enough room. I just barely have enough room at each end there. And then this is where my applique of a little triangle is going to go. I decided to trim this first before doing the applique. You can go either direction. And now my block is squared in the direction that it will need to go. I have this template that is going to be for the orange triangles that is going to go into each corner. This is a different shape than the triangles that are in this block. This one is an equilateral triangle, meaning all the sides are equal, but these are all at a very strange angle. So don't try to use one of these as a template. Use the equilateral one that is in the corner on the Dear Jane drawing. Now with the applique triangles on those opposite corners, this block is now complete. I hope you enjoyed going through this block H-2, also called Jacob Anthony, from the Dear Jane quilt. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below, or you can send me an email at soitseemscreations@outlook.com. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. You can subscribe and click that notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video, which is every Monday. This is Veronica Johnson with Sew It Seems, and I'll see you next time.